All right, the time now is 5:30. I'd like to call the Business Operations and Finance Committee meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Brian Anderson,
Here.
Spencer Anderson,
Present?
Joanne Winfield.
Here.
All members are present.
All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from April 5th of 2020.
Point of order. You need to approve the agenda first.
Sorry about that. I had it clicked and just skipped right over it. The next thing that we have is the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. All right, now the next thing is the approval of the minutes for April 5th of 2022. Do we have any, does anyone want to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. The next item we have is appointment of vice chair. I believe I just asked the person, correct?
Correct.
All right. So the person I'd like to appoint to the vice chair, I would ask Brian Anderson. Would you be willing to accept that?
I accept.
All right. So our vice chair will be Brian Anderson. All right. For our next item is our monthly finances. So our financial report for March of 2022.
Good evening and welcome to our new committee members. So we are going to be discussing March 2022 revenues and expenses. I'll give you a little bit of an overview as I go along because I know this is new to a couple of you. This page is just an overview, a summary of each of our funds. You can see the description to tell you what each fund belongs to. And it shows you the revenues and expense for the month. March is a pretty busy month. As you can see, there's a lot of revenues there. We received the equalization aid payment, which was about $16 million. We received our library aid, otherwise known as common school funds, and that was about $300,000. We have per pupil aid, which was about $4.7 million. And we also received our high poverty aid, which was about $350,000. As far as our expenses, you can see that there was some activity in our debt service funds, funds 38 and 39. And school districts typically make payments in March and in September, so that's why you see activity there. So then we go into some summary pages. There's 4 sections which cover funds 10 and 27. 10 is our general fund, 27 is our special education fund. And you'll see revenues and expenses with grant or without grants, and then revenues and expenses with grants. If you want more detailed information, there are some detailed reports attached in board docs for you. So I'll typically there's explanations you'll see, and those are, they describe the trends that we've seen so far this year, and you'll always see those at the bottom, and then I'll describe some of the changes that you'll see in this month. So as far as the revenue, no grants, we are trending similarly as far as the percent of revenues received year to date. There was a large increase in state sources this month, and that's due to the aids that we just discussed. And then the other revenue was a refund that we received in March from unemployment insurance expenses that were paid last year. Many districts are seeing those refunds now, and that's all due to the changes that we saw with COVID. So we received a nice discount. That was nice. Moving on to expenses, no grants. We're trending similarly as we did last month. Again, you'll see that insurance and judgments number in 2021 was high, and that's the refund we were just talking about. For the revenues with grants, we're trending similarly, again, to last month. There was really no significant changes. And typically, you'll see the grant revenues are about 1 month behind the grant expenses. And then finally, the expenses on the grant side, we're trending similarly as far as the dollar amount year to date. There was a decrease in non-capital objects this month, and that's due to technology purchased last year with ESSER funds. So that's that. Any questions?
Do any of the committee members have questions about this? All right, there's no questions from the committee, so the recommended action is to move to recommend approval of the March 2022 financial reports to the full Board of Education. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion carries. The next thing on our agenda is information discussion items. The next item is the SVPP grant project RFP.
All right, you ready? Good evening. I'm Ryan Turner, District Safety and Security Coordinator, and I am joined by Melissa Beavers, Executive Director of Pupil Services, Sean Winters, Director of Facilities, and the TC Networks team. We're also joined by Jesse Bandemir and John Thackler from Faith Technologies. Tonight, we would like to share some information with you about the School Violence Prevention Grant, or SVPP grant for short, that we were awarded in December, and what we propose to do with the funding at Beloit Memorial High School. First, I would like to provide information on what the SVPP grant is and what types of projects and initiatives are eligible for award funding. It is important to know that this grant does require a local cost share, and I will get into what that looks like at the end of this presentation. So, according to the grant solicitation, the goal of this program is to improve security at schools and on school grounds through the implementation of evidence-based school safety programs and technology. SVPP funding is authorized and available under the following purpose areas: coordination with local law enforcement, training for local law enforcement officers to prevent student violence against others and self, placement and use of metal detectors, locks, lighting, and other deterrent measures, acquisition and installation of technology for expedited notification of law enforcement during an emergency, and last, any other measures that in the determination of the COPS office director may provide a significant improvement in security. In June of 2021, we submitted a grant application seeking funding to install door alarms and monitoring stations so that any unauthorized access during school hours at any one of the 41 entrances would immediately be detected. We would also install interior key fob readers and update existing key fob readers so that employees can bypass the alarm and enter and exit as needed. On December 23rd, 2021, we were notified that we had been awarded $289,394 for our project. In addition to the original project concept, the district is also recommending 2 additional components. The first recommendation is to install exterior key fob readers to entrances where one is not currently installed. Serves a couple different purposes. This will allow us to effectively cease the need to issue exterior door keys. It will also allow first responders to enter through any door they need when responding to an incident. Adding key fob readers as recommended here is something that we've been working towards long term, but completing both projects simultaneously allows us to minimize disruption to the educational process and save costs. The second recommendation is to purchase the S2 Enterprise 100 platform. This will exponentially increase the number of portal licenses we have available to us as we expand access control across the district, including classroom, offices, etc. To keep it simple, one portal license is consumed when a door is put on a key fob reader or a fob reader is installed to turn off an alarm or disarm the burglar system. So as those expansions happen, we will quickly use up these licenses. The 100 platform will take us from 128 portal licenses to 7,168 licenses. On February 14th, 2022, we issued a request for proposal, or RFP, to seek bids for this project. The RFP reflected the original project concept and the installation of new external card readers. 2 bids were received. After reviewing the proposals and conducting follow-up interviews, we've selected Faith Technologies to complete this project. The breakdown of the cost is as follows. The total project cost is $420,382. This includes the original project and the 2 additional district recommended components. The grant award will cover $289,394, leaving our required cost share to be $130,988. With that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee members? All right, go ahead.
I have a question. With the proposal of this new security, with the grants that we're going to get, is there any way that we can try to train students or give them some lessons in understanding law enforcement and why they do types of things that they do? Is that possible?
You're talking with this grant funding?
Yes, sir.
The short answer, no, but there's plenty of opportunities, in the upcoming fall to work with students, allow our initiative that we talked about when we renew the SRO contract was to get our SROs into classrooms, talk about the police roles, why police do what they do, things like that. So with this grant, no, but we are already working on those initiatives anyways.
Perfect. Thanks, Ryan.
Absolutely.
So obviously, securing the building's a big deal. We have 41 entrances, so the idea is to monitor that and know who's coming and going, because we do have a closed campus during the day, correct? So how is, I see children come and go from the school all day, and we have a closed campus. So I guess I'm trying to understand how would implementing this stop that? What's going to be the step once something's detected? Door 37 is open, and maybe not with a fob, right? Maybe somebody opens it from the inside to let somebody in. So I guess I'm understanding how it's that's the equipment is going to translate into, actual hands-on effectiveness.
Yep, absolutely. So right now we have 6 security officers for the high school, and we have over 270 cameras throughout and on the exterior side of the building. We do not have, it would be impossible to monitor every single entrance in real time. So what this does, it uses technology to watch all of those doors for us. So let's say, the security officer is monitoring the cameras and that door alarm goes off. There's a monitoring station in the security office, alerts door 32. We can get the camera pulled up very quickly. The officer can get on the radio and say, hey, who's closest to door 32? There was just an intrusion alarm. They go and respond. If it's a student, leaving because they've had a bad day and they've had it, that'll be handled with the discipline code through administration. But if it is, an intruder or an unauthorized access, we deal with it depending on what the situation is. So it just alerts us to an intruder quicker than something happening and then we're backtracking to see how they got in the first place. And that's sometimes that's what we're doing now. Something happens and we work backwards and it's, oh, so-and-so let so-and-so in. So this just alerts us to a potential problem much, much quicker.
And maybe the follow-up question is for Dr. Keyser. So when we do have an incident, kind of how he laid out, and now it becomes, administration's job to follow up, what is the follow-up process on that? Again, I'm just trying to see it all the way through to the end. Someone, either they left or they left and then came back throughout the course of the day. They're not supposed to have done that. How are we handling that?
So, and to talk in generalities, I can give you kind of broad brushstrokes because they're very contextualized. So take the instance of a student scenario, a student having a bad day, like I'm out of here, and so forth. So we can have administration or pupil services intervene, try to assess where the student is before they leave the property. It's proper, and deal with the situation as is. If it's a case where someone propped open a door, someone jimmying open a door and is coming in, as Mr. Turner said, we have 6 officers plus an SRO that are stationed full-time at the high school, so we can intervene very quickly with people trained to do this, and then we would be activating our emergency command center. So we train annually with buildings and with the district on what do we do in certain situations, whether it be a natural disaster or something like an intruder alert. And so we have protocols both at the building and at the district level to be able to respond to that. So depending on the nature of it, could be a visitor who parked in the back, saw a door open, walked in, not knowing that that's not the entrance where they're going. That will be handled much differently than if it's someone from out of town who we have no idea why they're here, and when we try to intervene and intercept them, they're starting to evade us, and that becomes a much more heightened security risk, and we go into much different protocols at that point. But we do annually do safety training. We've had consultants who run us through disaster drills. We call them disaster drills because we never know what's going to happen. One year was a natural disaster. Another year it was a staff incident. So that's how, in broad brushstrokes, how we handle those types of situations.
Are there any other questions from committee members?
Ms. Beavers, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to add, part of the intention behind the project is really routing traffic to the front of the building, where we also have technology there for our visitors, the Raptor technology, which screens our visitors that are coming in too, because there are doors propped open. So it's not necessarily just for keeping kids in, it's for, not allowing people to leave, but it's to not allow unnecessary people inside that aren't supposed to be there. That make sense? Yeah.
All right, so there's no more questions from committee members?
So this is, because of the budgetary item, our protocol has been that we bring this for questions and allow it a month for additional questions that may crop up. Please route those questions to me, and then I can get that to the team, and this will come back next month for a formal proposal or formal motion to, if approved, go to the full board.
All right, so I got 2 questions, and then we'll move on. So with this, so we have to pay $130,988. So is this something that like we budgeted? Okay, so it was kind of forecasted. We got it all planned out and budgeted correctly then, right?
Before we applied for the grant, we worked with the previous executive director of business and finance to make sure that it was budgeted for.
Great. And then you guys talked about too the S2 Enterprise 100 platform. Is that like a subscription type thing that we have to apply for?
Nope.
So it's not a reoccurring cost?
Nope. That just sets us up for future expansion. So if we get too close to our cap of licenses that we have available, then we have to look at upgrading to a different tier to be able to make those expansions. So we take care of it now, and it's just one less hurdle or roadblock that we have to deal with, as we do more access control throughout the district.
All right, cool. Well, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
All right, thank you. And as Dr. Keyser said, right now, since it's just a discussion item, we hold it over for 1 more month. Let you guys kind of sit on it, think about questions that you might have, and gives us one more opportunity to ask. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item we have is item 3B, which is the Robinson Elementary School flooring RFP.
Good evening. And this is about our, the original hallway over at Robinson. And we want to replace the current VCT vinyl composite tile and replace it with LVT luxury vinyl tile. I don't want to get too far into the weeds about the differences between the two, but basically the current system we have to strip and wax. The new system that we want to put in, we just mop. That's it. Part of the reason why we want to change the flooring out is because the tile is starting to pop, which means we cannot strip the wax to make the floor look good because the tile's popping up, and it is almost like a whack-a-mole. And what we want to do is repeat the success we had at Converse. Converse and Robinson are a sister schools, so they're basically the same setup. And having said that, we released an RFP, which ties in with the board approval of our 10-year capital improvement plan a few months ago, and this project was on there. The nice part about that is we had $65,000 budgeted, allocated for this project, and it came in at $35,320, so a savings of almost $30,000. So we released the RFP. We had 2 responses, and out of the 2 responses, we are recommending going with the lowest bid. And the difference between the lowest bid and the highest bid is just under $7,000. And this project will be completed out of next year's budget, which starts July 1. And the material is already on hand, so we do not have to worry about material shortages. Any questions at all?
Do any of the committee members have questions? All right, I don't have any questions either, but I gotta say, if this makes our custodial staff their lives a little bit easier because they don't have to wax every year, and it makes the floors look nicer, I'm all for it.
Yes, absolutely.
And the reason we put this on here was below the $100,000 threshold. We don't need to seek formal board approval, but we wanted to show the projects that are coming off the capital 10-year capital plan and know what work's being done during the summer. So as the board gets to hear about projects and why things might be happening at certain buildings, we want to just make the board generally aware of all the work that's happening during the summer. So as we start to go through other discussions and we talk about the master facility plan later in the summer and the 10-year capital plan, I want to make sure that we understand how these two things work in concert but are also separate. So,
Board Member Schneider, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
Not really a question, but more of just a comment. That having visited Converse, I mean, the flooring in there really makes that hallway look really nice. It really brings it up and stands out. It's multicolor, as well as the fact that it's going to take less effort to maintain it. It just really makes that entrance in the hallways look really nice. So,
Thank you.
it's a great product. Thanks.
Well, thank you for those comments. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and then the next item is 3C, which is our preliminary 2022-2023 budget model update.
Okay, so tonight we're taking a preliminary look at our budget model using the Baird product, and with me I have Todd Hyeski from Baird Financial. So we're currently projecting a $3.5 million deficit in 2022-2023. And so we're going to go over some of those assumptions. These assumptions are rather conservative, and they may change as we find more about our student counts or more information about the upcoming TID closure revenue. So as far as the revenue assumptions, we projected a $3 million TID closure. That may be more and it may be less. We might not receive anything, but we will know more of that hopefully in the fall. We also put in for 23-24 a $3 million transfer from Fund 73 when our post-employment benefits run out. We put in some ESSER 3 funding in 22-23 and 23-24. That was close to $9.5 million. We increased our summer school FTE now that we are coming back to some pre-COVID levels. Our September FTE membership, we show a decrease in 22-23 of about 400 students and then declining in years following. We increased our independent charter school membership by about 335 students in next year, and then some lower amounts in the following years. We added a $200 revenue limit per pupil increase starting next year and going forward. And we increased our AGR aid revenue to actual and kept that flat going forward. As far as the expenditure assumptions, we right-sized our salary budget next year and going forward and added some increases, the $1,250 per teacher and 2% increase for all other staff. We increased our medical and dental insurances by about 5% in all future years. We increased the custodial contract by about 4% in 23-24 and going forward. We increased our utilities about 5% going forward, 3% for pupil transportation. We increased our textbooks expense by about $600,000, bringing that to $800,000. We decreased our enrollment out by about 200 in 22-23, and then lower in future years, and no reduction to staffing levels yet included in budget projections. And then as far as the levy and mill rate, I will have Todd Hieski speak on that.
So one of the things you will notice in this early projections is that you're seeing a significant decrease in the levy and mill rate. And one of the reasons for that is currently you have Fund 39 capital debt from a previous referendum, and the district has been levying additional dollars into Fund 39 in prior years to pay off that debt sooner. So next year, assuming no new debt, would be the last year that you could potentially levy for that Fund 39 capital debt, which would be significantly less than was levied this year. And again, it would be the maximum, and then all your future current debt payments would be levied for. You wouldn't need to levy for any additional. So that is why you see a significant current estimated decrease in your tax levy and mill rate. We are using a 2.5% estimate for property valuation increase for next year, which affects the mill rate. And so the other piece that, and I know my teammate Lisa Voisin, somebody that's been on the board, she's been and done some presentations in the past and talking about kind of School Finance 101 and your situation. You guys are kind of a unique situation where you're heavily aided from the state. So we have your revenue limit authority, which is the revenue you can generate. And then the state gives what they call equalization aid, their largest aid, that then offsets your tax levy. And because your district is considered more property poor per member, you get more equalization aid. And you're actually getting to the point where your equalization aid is staying flat or maybe going up a little bit, but your revenue limit authority, the total amount you can generate for revenue for budget purposes, is declining. And so you're almost getting to the point where you're going to have very little general fund levy, and the state's going to be paying for almost all of that piece. So that's your general fund levy. And then outside of that is this capital referendum, the Fund 39 debt. And when that potentially, if again, next year could be the last year of that levy with no additional debt, then you're really getting to the point where that levy and mill rate could really be very, very small in that future. So, it does open up potential if looking at a operating and or facilities referendum, there's that decline, there's a large potential bringing it back up to where it was currently and in the past, so.
Are there any questions from committee members? All right. Do any other board members that are currently present have any questions? Okay. So you guys are projecting currently that our 2022, 2023 year, we're looking at a mill rate of $2.91. That's a pretty significant drop.
And that's based on no defeasance of any referendum debt and not swapping it out for any new potential referendum, correct? Which would be impossible to do at this point.
Right, that is correct, yes. You do have, again, jumping ahead, but just hypothetically, if you would potentially in November, if you go to referendum in November, you could actually add that to the 22-23 budget. What they would do is, since the budget's normally approved in October, is the board could approve 2 different levies, and then depending on how the election would turn out. It's rare, but it is done. But otherwise, you're right. Otherwise, you would see that, without that, you would see a drop in there for 22-23. And part of that also depends on how this year finishes off. Because if you guys underspend your budget, because you're highly aided on your expenditures, so if you underspend, you might get a little bit less aid, and that levy mill rate could be higher. If you spend more, then you're going to get more aid, and it could even be a little bit lower. So.
All right, well, thank you. Dr. Keyes, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just want to thank Todd for working with Wendy on the forecasting tool. This is what the tool is designed to do, is to put in some many different assumptions. One of the things we'll be talking about shortly is the proposed cost of living, and working with Tim and the BEA, putting some proposals. Having the more knowns that we can put in here and lock in, the more firm these numbers become. So the laundry list that Wendy had shared, I will be sharing again in the superintendent's board update during the regular board. But as you can see, these numbers can shift. And what we often talk about, and what I've often said, is you budget retail and you buy wholesale. So when we budget, we're budgeting with maximum numbers in mind. And so when we forecast, we're forecasting with trying to pull out the wiggle room, but also projecting so that we're not, we want to minimize any surprises. Would that be fair?
Yes. Yep.
So I appreciate, and we'll continue to do these updates periodically at the committee level, and then you'll be able to report them out at the full board. And then as we get into the summer and closer to October, we'll start to do more of these at the regular board.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the next items we have are action items. The first one is the Bmhs Computer Lab update. And
all right, I'll jump into that one.
okay, I was going to just ask for a brief update since we have 2 new committee
Absolutely.
members on here.
So these next 3 have been presentations that were presented by TC Networks team with new board members on board. I prepped the team to provide a summary update. We are asking for formal approval in moving these to the full board if the committee so deems. So I'll turn it over to our team here.
Welcome, new members. I actually just had Brent bring our whole slideshow. It's just a couple slides per topic, so we'll just have that up here while we're going over it with you guys. So the first thing we're talking about here is the computer labs. So there's 10 total labs at the high school. We have identified 4 that need immediate upgrades. 2 in the business lab, and 1 art lab, and 1 for Project Lead the Way. So with the Chromebook one-to-one initiative, you know, that the Chromebooks do serve a lot of our needs, but the 4 labs that we've chosen for upgrades run programs that the Chromebooks aren't capable of running. Okay. The labs are nearing 10 years old. They're difficult to service and becoming costly. Productivity is hindered because of that. With the upgrades, we're going to be able to run QuickBooks, Microsoft Office, Adobe Creative Cloud, AutoCAD, programs that they need in their day-to-day classroom lives. We will have support and service options, so we'll have replacement parts available, troubleshooting, repairs, updates, all in the warranty that we have. No, it's okay. And I was just going to say it'll decrease downtime in the classroom by getting all these updated. Any questions that we can address with anyone?
So they went to bid, and the recommended quote is through PDS, correct? So in the amount of $114,204.
Yes.
All right. Do any of the committee members have any questions about this? Go ahead.
Did we only get one quote from PDS? Did we try anywhere else to get any lower quotes?
Yes, we had 3.
Yeah, we did reach out and have 3 other quotes provided, and
Yes.
PDS was the lowest bid. Yep.
Yes,
Thank you.
no problem.
So obviously, you looked ahead to see what the needs are going to be, because it might be 10 years again, right, before some of these labs get upgraded. So
Right.
would you say you're confident that nobody knows the future, obviously, but are we setting at least those 4 up for success for long-term?
Yes, that was the goal.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
It also is reflecting that we moved to a one-to-one environment, and so the need for full classroom computer labs have been offloaded much to the devices. However, there are still in these 4 particular labs the need for robust software. AutoCAD is a really meaty program. So is things like Peachtree accounting, and you cannot run those on our handheld devices. So that's why we still need some of those labs. Graphic art design, Adobe Light Studio is also one of those big ones. So that's why we still need some of these labs.
Perfect.
All right. Are there any more questions? All right. I mean, being someone that was in the technology stuff and also a student that used these, I can only imagine how they aged throughout the time. And also using AutoCAD on these computers, I can only imagine how much more like they've added and how these computers are now struggling to actually process all that. So I'm glad to see that we're trying to make it a little bit easier for the teachers and the students.
Thank you.
So with no other questions, would anyone like to move to recommend the acceptance of the PDS quotes in the amount of $114,204 to the full board for approval?
I'll make that motion to recommend.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and second. Anyone in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. The next item we have is the MacBook or Apple MacBook refresh.
Open the second slide here. Okay. So our current MacBooks sustained a lot of wear and tear that we didn't anticipate during the pandemic, with curriculums focusing around video conferencing and video-intensive learning applications. We're maxed out on the processing power that these devices have. So the strain has caused short battery life, which disrupts class time, and currently staff have to pay a deductible out of their own pocket for any accidental damage. Not fun. So the latest model that we're looking to get here provides 3.5 times the processing power versus our current model. So the longer battery life is going to greatly reduce disruptions in the classroom. With our new warranty, we get 3 years with no service fee. So staff will no longer have to pay out of pocket for accidental damage. The trade-in value on our current MacBooks is still high enough to make a significant difference in our lease renewal. So due to the high trade-in value that we're getting, we're actually going to have lower lease payments annually that have been projected and quoted by Apple, which should be in your board documents.
Sorry.
Go for it.
So we leasing the MacBooks?
Yes.
Can somebody explain to me why we leasing them instead of just buying them right out?
Well, would you have any insight on that, Brent?
I guess I would just say the district has been leasing MacBooks for, I think, since 2012, and just the financial impact. It's easier to pay annually, and then also with the buyback value, the trade-in value of these MacBooks, it just makes it more cost-effective toward the last year. And we get that buyback money, and that helps, like Jillian just stated, to lower our lease payments for future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Spreads out the cost.
Do any other committee members have questions? All right. How old are these MacBooks currently that our staff
So
have?
these are 2 years old currently.
Okay.
So this was actually an opportunity that Apple came to us in regards to an opportunity to do this, and then best case, worst case scenario, we can have a guaranteed minimum, which would keep basically our lease payments the same and get new models, and also eliminate the out-of-pocket cost for the warranty. But with the option that if our devices are better than projected, any additional savings will go into lower lease payments. So worst case scenario, our payments stay the same as they were. Best case scenario, they go down.
That's correct.
In every scenario, no out-of-pocket costs for replacements for our
Correct.
staff moving forward.
Yes.
All right. Do you have a question? Now?
I did have a question. Do TC Network, do you guys cover BYOD? Sorry.
It's not something, I think we cover it. It's just not something that the district has discussed, right, fully. But it's something that we do cover, yes.
Is there any way that we can talk about that? Maybe to cut some costs in leasing. If we have a teacher or someone who has their own device, maybe we can help us out in the sense of bringing our own device. And if you guys will just help maintain it, I think that'd be a great idea. I'm just trying to think outside the box.
Sure. We'll take a look at it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
All right. If there's no other questions, I'm looking for an action to move to recommend a new 3-year lease with Apple for a total finance amount of $3,687.30, with the guaranteed buyback credits to the full board for approval. Do you have a motion?
I'll make the motion for a recommendation.
Do you have a second?
I second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. All right, the next item we have is item 4C, which is the audio and video needs for the BMHS.
Okay, so there's actually 3 areas of focus that we were looking at here. The auditorium, Barkin Gymnasium, and the cafeteria. So the auditorium and Barkin are equally in need of immediate upgrades. The cafeteria does need to get upgraded if funds permit, but we prioritize the auditorium and Barkin Gym. We did solicit RFPs from 3 different companies. We obtained quotes for all 3. But we, again, are focusing on the gym and the auditorium for now. Hang on a second one here. So the performing arts and theater students utilize this space regularly, at the auditorium, I apologize. Community events are held here. Current equipment is difficult to use with modern devices. We are unable to offer streaming or video recording. Outdated technology prevents students from learning how to operate essential equipment used in the industry. With these enhancements and improvements, we're going to see a significant increase in picture and video quality. We'll have centralized control functions to make everything more user-friendly. We're going to have audio and video streaming, recording, and conferencing, which we don't currently have any of that. And the modernized space is going to make this a more attractive location to host community events, which will improve our rapport with the public. For Bark and Gym, again, many community and sporting events are held here. A lot of the equipment in there is over 25 years old. Unreliable connections and outdated audio system create unpleasant noises. It provides a poor experience for everyone in the gym. Constant maintenance is required, which can be costly and often disrupts games or other events held there. So the enhancements will significantly improve the audio quality and clarity. We're going to have a flexibility in audio zones, so we'll be able to control what's being played on the floor versus being played on the bleachers. It will significantly reduce the need for regular maintenance, which is going to cut back on not only repair costs, but the man hours that are put into that. And similar to the auditorium, the upgrade is going to make everything more user-friendly. It's going to modernize the space and hopefully make it more attractive for hosting more community events.
So in the costs for these two, looking at all three, while it's not 100% one-to-one savings, but the savings from the first two projects that were just approved went into the costs for the auditorium and Bark and Gym. This will allow us, as mentioned, an opportunity to improve the audio quality within the Barkin arena and so that better clarity of sound for our senior awards, things like that. And then in the auditorium, we can open it up for interactive. We currently can't do anything like Zoom meetings or streaming events in the auditorium out to our community. So this opens up a whole new venue for the auditorium.
All right, do we have any committee members with questions?
I had a couple of questions. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
First question, how much have we spent in the last 5 to 6 years on the Barkin as an audio and video for repairs?
That I'm not aware. So I know it's been some time since the audio has been looked at. It's been more piecemeal. In fact, the first time we went through this, they were utilizing the exact same speakers that existed. This will include those speakers, but add over double the number of speakers that are in there.
Thanks. And second question, will the Barkin and the auditorium mirror each other as in technology so our kids can get a feel how to run AV stuff like that?
No, so the Barkin is only looking at audio enhancements, where the auditorium is looking at audio and video enhancements.
I'm thinking in the Barkin, maybe it was because they had a DJ. I think the girls' game, they had a DJ in there, and it sounded really good.
Oh.
So if you guys get those speakers, that would be amazing.
Okay.
So we'll be able to stream events in the auditorium, but not in Barkin? Is that the thought?
Yeah, so the Barkin, they do currently have a huddle cam for live streaming of events, but the auditorium, we're looking at adding 2-point in Zoom cameras. So if there's a convocation or an event or even a play happening, we could zoom in and broadcast that live via YouTube or other streaming services, where in the Barkin, we would just be utilizing the huddle camera for the sports currently.
And the other piece, this year, the Beloit International Film Festival moved away from using DVDs and Blu-ray players for their movies and streaming. So now we would actually have, it would be in a venue where we could stream in some of those pieces and add that as a point stop.
All right, are there any more questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
You said a huddle camera and the barking. Is that just the one that sits in the balcony?
That's correct.
Is there any way that we can find out if we can have, I know we host a lot of things in there. We got basketball, we have wrestling, volleyball. Is there any way that we can probably get a better camera in there?
We can certainly look into that.
I'm thinking of the benefit of the student athlete to where if we have a really good student athlete and we can help them be more mindful of how they look on the court and their appearance, I think that'd be a really good idea.
We can look into seeing what that would cost to add that in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right. Those are good. All right. Yeah, that's a great idea, adding another camera just to help. Because, I mean, sometimes, like, I mean, it'd actually be kind of nice to have a better quality camera for the kids to see things as they're playing on the court, or even if we're live streaming it, maybe just having that little bit better image that someone could actually, like, when they're at home, actually enjoy watching the game and see their kid play if they can't attend in person.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to be looking to move to recommend the acceptance of the Peak Systems Group quote in the amount of $104,260 to the full board for approval. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, the next item we have is item 4D, which is the cost of living.
All right, so tonight I have Mr. Vedra here from the BEA. This is conversation that he and I have had in terms of the long-term budgeting strategy in addressing our budget deficit. So as a summary, our principles around making decisions for budgeting is making sure that our budget decisions align to our goals and outcomes. We want to make sure that we're always looking for our opportunities and efficiencies to drive us to those outcomes, but we're always in a space where we're trying to modify, we're trying to review and address areas of concern. And the guiding principles is really staying core to what our purpose is, which is educating our students and providing for their social emotional well-being and development, but also making sure that we are staying ahead of the game and trying to keep the community and the board informed of our decisions. So when you think in wholesales, we have about a $102 million budget. And when we think about those budget pieces, we have fixed costs, we have costs that are fixed based on variables. So once we know those variables, we can determine what those costs are, and then we also have discretionary. So when we think about our salaries and benefits, that's about 64% of our overall budget, and the rest goes into operations. There's really only one line item in all of these bullet points that's truly discretionary, and there's only a few of these budget items that are really fixed costs, and those are a lot of our contracted services. But other than that, all of these things are variable costs. So whether we have family members or whether we have single coverage, whether we have catastrophic events or very healthy years, these numbers ebb and flow with a lot of these pieces. So when we're dealing with budgeting, we're really looking at one of two things: controlling revenue sources or controlling expenditures. Administration really can control the expenditures, but revenues are really locked in at the board level. When the board approves a budget, they're approving levying a tax from our community in conjunction with state and federal sources to give us our overall budget that we can spend for the ensuing year. if we need to make changes in that, that has to be looked at. And that's why we're having the discussion at the board level around what does a referendum look like? What are the different types of referendum? And what needs to go into making an informed decision for the board and for the community? As we move forward, one of the things that we're looking at is we've approved a budget, and I know the numbers have been updated, but this to kind of keep historical benchmarks in place. We approved a $10.5 million budget deficit this year. And at the time that we did that, our forecasting tool projected roughly a $12 million budget deficit if we just anticipated cost of living increases, and $14 million the year after that. Well, as we know that CPI this year has been projected at an all-time high of 4.7%, which is about $2.5 million. So that $12 million is really $1 million more, and it's more like 13. As part of our last year's budget, we approved a cost of living increase of $12.50 flat increase per teacher and an overall 2% increase for all other employee groups. This $12.50 was a conversation and a exploratory process with the administration BEA to look at how does this flat rate over a course of 3 budget years fare in reference to CPI. When we entered into that agreement, we agreed that we would do this for 3 budget cycles, and this coming year would be that 3rd budget cycle. Knowing that we have that budget deficit, one way that we can control increases in deficit is by controlling expenditures going from one year to another. So while this isn't a true dollar for dollar savings in the sense that I'm not going to spend $10 on something, I'm only going to spend $5 on it and keep $5 in the bank, we are savings because a proposal of doing the same cost of living for next year now manages what those costs would be moving forward. So instead of a 4.7% CPI, the agreement with the BEA would be to do the same cost of living increase, which would mean that costs or salary and wages would be about $1.15 million. And when you assume the benefits within that, that would be about $1.2 million total increase from one year to the next. So thinking about that over the course of this year to next year, instead of going to $12 or $13 million budget deficit, holding everything else equal, we're really going from 10.5 to 11.7, which in that sense is a savings because we are managing our overall increase in debt from one budget year to another. So with that summary, my proposal and recommendation to this committee is that we move forward a recommendation to the full board tonight that we approve a cost of living increase of a flat $12.50 per teacher and 2% increase for all other employee groups for the next budget year. Doing this now instead of waiting until October puts a significant rock in our budgeting forecasting tool that is now no longer a guess, but it would be a certainty, and then we can actually start to budget around those and start to make those numbers a little less flexible and a lot more firm moving forward. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Do any of the committee members have questions?
I just have one quick question, Dr. Keiser. So the $12.50 per, that was 3 years ago, right?
It was agreed 3 years ago, and it would be for 3 budget pieces. And so Mr. Vedra was here at the time when that, so can provide some historical context to that if there are questions around that.
Yeah, if you could. I appreciate it. I just want to be clear. So for the last 3 years, our teachers haven't received a raise for 3 years? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, 3 years ago, we had an antiquated salary schedule that was related to old teacher licensing and those types of things back with what the state had. So we had to develop a new salary model, a new salary schedule, okay? So we went from almost 40-some steps on the old salary schedule, down to 30 on this one, okay? And we decided that in the old salary schedule had like increases of like $425 per year. And sometimes you'd get 2 steps on that, depending where CPI fell. So you might get $850 in a year. So we came up with the new salary model with the district where they were $1,250 step increases, and every year you got to move down a step. We shrunk it down to only 30 steps, so you only had to be here 30 years to achieve the top of the pay scale, or you got experience credit coming in and those types of things. We had a bachelor's lane and a master's lane to it. So it really simplified everything. It also caught up some of our beginning teachers because we raised the starting salary to $43,000 a year. Some of our teachers were only making $38,000 at the time. They were rolled into that $43,000 lane and then started moving forward at $1,250. The agreement at the time was we would move through 3 years of this model, and then we would compare that to what the CPI increases were over those same 3 years and see where we came to. So this will be the last year of that movement. Next year we come back and we say, okay, how did we do? I can tell you right now, the first 2 years, we beat CPI for almost all employees on that salary model. This year, nobody saw 4.7% coming, so we're a little bit behind this year. But we agreed to those 3 years of movement and then come back and adjusting as needed. So that's what we're proposing, that we honor that agreement and do the $1,250 this year, and then we come back and have that discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, so how did we address the, when you raise, especially some of those starting teachers and you raise them from the 38 to the 43, you always have that challenge of, the teacher that's been here for 3 years is at 44,000 and doesn't get that same lift. So how have we addressed and teachers or staff or whoever that's didn't necessarily benefit from that increase on the lower end?
At the time that we set up this new salary schedule, we also wanted to put a longevity piece into it, but that was not approved at the time. One of the ways you can do that is to start separating out pay by, honoring how long people have been here and paying them a longevity bonus. So we have maintained that's what we need to establish. I know that the board has adopted that in their goals to see a budget that honors that. So that's one way you can do that, to help address those salary inequities. I mean, yeah, you're right. Some people got a really big bump at the beginning of when they got rolled into the new one, and others just kept moving along, but did not receive as big of a bump.
And it's just something that we see in the whole, and it's not just in the school districts, it's in the community, right? So when fast food says, hey, we're going to pay everybody $15 an hour, and you were already making 16, it diminishes, the gap in skill, the gap in experience, and so yeah, I'd like to see that get addressed for sure.
Yes, and so we partnered at the beginning of the school year with Evergreen Solutions to do a comprehensive review of all of our positions from a job description, market analysis, and then compensation philosophy. So we're starting to get some draft proposals for that. Our plan is once we have something that we feel is getting close to something we can make a recommendation, we would meet with the BEA and the secretaries. These are the 2 unions that are in our district. Have that conversation, that meet and confer, and then we would bring as administration a formal proposal to the board as to what a new compensation philosophy, so that we would tie all of the employee groups together. Because what we have been is we would take care of teachers 1 year, say paraeducators another year, in another employee group the next. And so by the time you get through 7 different employee groups, you're antiquated in somewhere else. So we want to have one philosophy that we can move forward with succinctly and simplify the process even more.
Very good, thank you.
All right, is there any more questions? All right, and when are you thinking that we're going to get those like draft proposals?
Our goal would be that if we can, right now they're initial drafts, so we're giving feedback. The ideal would be end of this school year, so end of May, start to bring them right at the end of the school year, and then have them to the board in June, July, so that we can get them started before the beginning of the school year. The last thing, and I look at Wendy because the last thing we want to do is approve something and then have to go retroactive, but you know, if we have to do that, we want to do it right versus doing it fast.
Yep, I'm all in favor of making sure we do it correctly, because last thing I want to do is promise something and then have to backtrack to try to fix it. And I think our staff members deserve us to do it correctly for them. So, all right. So no other questions? All right. With that, I'm looking for an action to move to approve to the full board a recommendation of a budget of cost of living increase of $1,250 per teacher and a 2% increase for all other employee groups for the 2022-2023 school year. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, motion carries. All right, that brings us to our meeting closing items, which are, so for our next meeting date, it will be on Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 at 5:30. And our last item is motion to adjourn. Do we have a motion?
A motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, guys. Thank you very much. And the meeting's done. Like, you want the.
This part where I can't see. Thank you. All right, good evening. I'm going to call the Human Resource Committee meeting to order at 6:44 PM. Secretary Show, could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Brian Anderson,
Present?
Spencer Anderson,
Present.
Amy Levy, Sean Levy,
Present.
Megan Miller,
Present.
Greg Schneider,
Present.
Joanne Winfield.
Present.
I show all members present in the boardroom with the exception of Megan Miller, and Amy Levy is absent.
Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes from April 19th, 2022?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, it passes unanimously. Item 2, employment recommendations. A motion may be made to convene the Human Resource Committee in closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses C, the Wisconsin State statutes relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Is there anyone for the need to go into closed session? All right, seeing none, is there a motion for the approval of item B, committee report, employment recommendations, exhibit A and B?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. There are on Exhibit A quite a few resignations and retirements. Can you just remind me when we get the exit interview data? Like, when is that due to come? Because it's important to understand what's going on there. Thanks.
Certainly, Vice President Miller, I'll reach out to Tracy to get an update on when those exit interviews are conducted and when that data will come to us.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Any other items for discussion? Okay. It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Passes unanimously. Next meeting date, let me see. Yep. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at 6:30 PM. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned, and we'll start, we're early now, we caught up. 7 o'clock business meeting. We'll be at 7 o'clock. All right, good evening. I want to call this regular board meeting for Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 to order. Secretary Shope, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Brian Anderson,
Present?
Spencer Anderson,
Present.
Amy Levy, Sean Levy,
Present.
Megan Miller,
Present.
Greg Schneider,
Present.
Joanne Winfield.
Present.
All members are present in the boardroom except Megan Miller, and Amy Levy is absent.
Is there a motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All right, it's been moved by Board Member Greg Schneider and seconded by Board Member Spencer Anderson. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, it passes unanimously. Board Member Spencer Anderson, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I can.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Mrs. Shope, we're at public comment. Mrs. Shope, do we have any public comments?
I have nobody here in the boardroom, and I have no emails.
Okay. Item 3, reports to the board, Superintendent Board Report.
Okay, so thank you, Board President Levy. Tonight's Superintendent's Board update, I'm going to take a little bit different opening. We have started the district strategic planning design team process, and one of the first things we did was we did a SWOT, or strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat analysis. And one of the things that came out as a strength was the communications that the district has increased and enhanced over these past 18 months. So with that, I'm going to open it up to start with our communications team to talk a little bit about the work that they've been doing. They oftentimes hide behind the scenes, but their impact is felt across our community as we endeavor to take all of the good things that are happening within the district and spread them far and wide to honor our students, our staff, our families, and our community. So take it away.
Great. And thank you, Dr. Keyser. I believe I shared the presentation with you. Thank you, board members, for allowing Maria Acevedo and I to have an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about our top 10 communication channels. And then we're going to talk about the results that we see within those communication channels and how effective we are in reaching our target markets, which are current students, family, and staff, prospective students and families, prospective employees, and our community at large. So as you can see, Dr. Keyser, the next slide, please. Great. These are our top 10 communication channels. And what we try to do is manage our narrative. And how do we manage that narrative and ensure that our brand is being shared out through those communication channels? And then how do we manage our narrative to be relevant, consistent, engaging, and aid in the recruitment and retention of staff, students, and families? So I'm going to discuss that tonight. So our very first platform that we use is social media, and I have a very favorite quote about social media For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, plus a social media overreaction. So while we do use many, we have 3 really social media platforms we use, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We've really just started using LinkedIn and Instagram, so I'll come back at a later date and share some results with you. And then you'll see us talk about LinkedIn a little bit later. So every day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, we post 3 to 4 positive, engaging posts of things going on in our district, students, staff, and everyone. And what does that result in? 840 positive posts on Facebook each school year. We have 7,440 followers, and we've increased that by 537. Each month, we look at the number of people who are looking at our Facebook page. They're looking at it, sharing, commenting. 38,000 people, Facebook users, are on our site each month. Since the beginning of August, 147, almost 150,000 people have seen our messages consistently. So one of the things we're doing, consistent, positive, repetitive, that's our mission. We also look for engagement, so we have activities, contests. We encourage everyone in the community to participate with our Facebook challenges. Our top 5 this year was our Hispanic Heritage Month, Black History Month, What's Your Favorite School Lunch? That was a very popular campaign. Teacher Appreciation Week, and then at Valentine's Day, we did a I Love an Sdb campaign, and again, that was one of our top engagement pages. The other way in which we manage our narrative is through media, and a lot of people ask me, how do you get stories? How does the paper or radio or someone hear about it? We have 3 really modes of communication with the media. We do story pitches, and those are typical phone calls. We'll call NPR, we'll call Madison, Rockford, wherever, and say, hey, we got this really great thing going on in our district, are you interested? And we work with them. Or we do a media alert, which is really just an email, who, what, where, when, why. We send that out, and sometimes there's engagement on that or not. And the third way is a news release, and many of you have probably received those. Those are much more detailed. We provide the quotes, we give the results. So different media outlets like different forms of communication more. This year, we really focused on regional and national radio, television, print, and online publications, and we've had 200 positive stories that were shared by the media for us, and you can find that on our website. The next way we manage our narrative is through our website. Our website's mobile friendly, and if you look at the number of hits we've had this year, it's really gone up over the past year. 911 page views, lots of interaction on that site, and then almost 600,000 targeted visits. That's when Maria and I sit down and we say, ooh, let's attach a QR code to this. Let's attach a link. Let's share this. So we are actively looking and sharing our messages and then having people come into our website. We're ADA compliant, which is very, very important. So we have to really look at the colors we're using, the font sizes, and how well our website interacts with programs with people who are visually impaired. We've passed our audit, and our website is that. The other way is we continue to look at ways on our website to have links, buttons, ways for people to engage with us on our website. So one of the most engaging parts of our website and us managing that narrative is really our news tab. And as you'll see, these are all types of information that people can get on our news tab. So we take what's out in social media, what's on our print, what's in media, and give it a shelf life that lasts longer than whatever that post will. So individuals can come here, get information about our staff. We spotlight families, we spotlight staff, we spotlight students, we have news, blog, and we always post our highlights. One of the nice things that happened, and Maria and I are feeling rather proud of this, we were asked to present to two national conferences about our news tab and our family engagement. And we're happy to say while other school districts reached out to us, there were a number of colleges, including Ole Miss and North Carolina's Central University, who reached out and wanted to talk to about how we get families engaged. They asked us for templates, so we were able to help them last year create a broader news tab than just news releases. So on the news tab, there's two things we're really excited about. One is our Sdb blog. If you look on that, we've had 35 blog posts since the beginning of the year. Melissa Beavers was our very first blog post. Since that time, we've had students, families, community partners, business leaders, all write about the good things happening in our district and their collaborations. We've had 4,800 total visits to that site, and in addition to that, 3,100 targeted visits. We post our blog on our LinkedIn account, and that way, most of the followers on our LinkedIn account are business and community leaders, so it gives them an opportunity to get the information. The other thing we do every month, and we have done for 2 years, is our Sdb highlights. Every month, we write about our top 8 to 10 stories that have occurred within our district, and we share those out. So on the one side of that, you can see that we did a nice story about our All-Star Awards. Those go out to staff members who were nominated by their peers and recognized for their good work, and our Beloit Junior Nights. So again, under our news tab, you can find all this information. So now what I'd like to do is turn it over to Maria. She's going to talk about a few other ways, communication channels, and starting off with our app.
Thank you, Monica. So with our app, if you guys don't have it already downloaded, I would recommend you guys do, as well as our families, our students. We currently have about 11,500 users. And the really nice thing about our app is that when somebody downloads it for the first time, they can follow school. So let's say somebody has a student at the high school, at McNeil, and possibly over at Converse. They can follow those schools, and then they will get push notifications directly to their phones from those schools to stay connected. As you guys can see, that's where they get those real-time alerts and notifications. And then we also have important information. So we circled a couple of them up here. You can see those notifications are there. We have information about summer school currently. We have our Sdb family features and then our Sdb blog, along with a lot of other important information. So these buttons are updated, obviously based on the needs of our market. Currently, we have summer school because that's coming up, but at the beginning of the school year, we typically have up there our school supply list, our calendar for the next school year, so we change these often. We program and manage the app in-house, so we're able to change them with ease, and we're able to help families as well with that. As you guys can see here too, we also populate top stories. So right now it's Teacher Appreciation Week, so you guys can see that top stories that are showing up are on our teachers. And this gets populated directly from our Facebook, so they interact. So they pull stories from our Facebook page, and then it pulls stories from our website. So that is all on its own, and it's really nice for somebody who has the app to get that information if they don't have Facebook themselves. The next thing we do is manage our narrative through the Sdb Newsletters. So we use a really good program called SMORE, and all of our schools utilize it as well. So us at the district level, we have the Superintendent Newsletter. So that one's shared out twice a month in English and Spanish to our families and staff. And then it's shared via email, text, our Sdb app, and the website with our Blackboard system. So on average, we have about 3,500 to 5,000 views from our families, which is really, really good. And then we also have our school and program newsletters. So every school does a newsletter that gets shared out weekly. And again, those they share out via text, email, the Sdb app, and the website, and they share them out with their staff and their families. And then we have average of hundreds to thousands of views. So some of our smaller elementary schools get a couple hundred views, whereas you'll see the high school will get thousands of views because they share it out with a lot more students and families. And then we also provide monthly trainings with our staff who run their own SMORE newsletters to provide them that extra training to keep them up to date when new things arise. So they're staying up to date on those. Next slide, thank you. We also manage our narrative through the printed material. So we have done hundreds and hundreds of printed material at the district level for different programs. I'll just name a few. We have flyers, infographics, postcards, bookmarks, stickers. We have really nice window clings. If you guys come in through the front, you'll see the window clings that say follow us on Facebook, download our app with a QR code. Those were something that was really nice. We have notepads, thank you cards, recognition cards, business cards. I think we left a couple of notepads on your desk, so those are just some of the printed materials. And we're able to do some of them in-house with our print shop, and then some of them we do with a vendor as well. So again, these are unique things that we do. We have Dr. Keyser, who you guys may not know. He does thank you cards for for families and students. When something nice happens, he'll write a handwritten thank you card that he'll send out to students or families when something great happens. So that's some of the things that you guys may not know about, but we help with that as well. We also have pieces that we've done for recruitment. So up here on the screen, if we could go back. No, sorry. You'll see the ones that are kind of like in the top right-hand side, purple and green. Those are some recruitment pieces that we did for HR. We also did recruitment pieces for different programs, and then retention pieces as well. So we have like a nice welcome to the team card that every new staff member gets with a nice little gift from HR. So it's just things that we're able to help out with and do in-house. We also have our carousel and our channel 991. So we have some examples here of the information that gets shared out through there. We have our board member information on there. Right now we have some information about our portrait of a graduate, but we also have our contact information for our schools. And this is all done through Carousel. It's a new program that we're implementing, and it's going really nice so far. We're going to be training some of the schools to be able to utilize it so they can be sharing this information not only on channel 991, but also in the all the TVs and screens in the district. So if you guys walk in, there's a nice big screen here in the lobby, and you'll see that this is constantly running through. So it's not only that contact information, we can also do videos on there, which you'll see we have like our school district alert video. And again, this is all managing district content, and then schools will also be providing content at their school and buildings. So we'll be doing a little bit more training on that because it's a little more a newer program. So I'm going to turn it over to Monica, and she's going to wrap it up for us.
Okay, 2 more minutes. Now I want to talk about managing our narrative in non-traditional marketing ways. I hope you've seen our bus wraps that have been out there. They're all over the city. I love this better than a billboard because each bus, they rotate their buses on 13 different routes. So it's not only on one route, they move them around and they go through all the city. We get a lot of good feedback and recognition for that, and I think it exemplifies our brand. We do some promotional items, the Sdb pins that I shared at the last board meeting, notepads that we do in-house, and we give them out to community members. They're at their desk. They talk about our mission and things we want to do. We did initiate a branded email signature this year. So we've worked with the leadership team on making sure that all of our signature lines look the same, and we're promoting information, which we do correctly. So that's one thing. And our testimonials, again, from students, family, and staff. One of the ways we also bring people to our website and we share is our community hub. That's listed in every one of Dr. Keyser's newsletter everywhere. Community partners send us their flyers, their information. We upload that free on our website called Community Hub. Right now, there are job opportunities with the city of Beloit. Welty has a camp going. Boys and Girls Club have a teen night. The Y has a softball. We put that all in there and share it out. They, in turn, share that information out. So our Community Hub page and our Community Partnership page are probably one of our top 2 hits on our website. Then lastly, we have what we've been calling our raving fans. We have 125 community members who sign up to get all the good news about our district once a month. We give them links, updates, information, and then they share that out with their families, friends, and colleagues. We started this about 6 months ago, and again, I've gotten good feedback. So it's just another way for us to share information out. And lastly, we have some exciting things. So we had an intern this past semester from the high school who helped us with things, Natalie Bosco. We have another intern coming in this summer, and he's working on a YouTube channel just that will be for marketing and promotions. He wants to be a YouTube star, and he has lots of ideas. So we're very excited to have him working with us this summer. His first project is going to be Teach Me Something New. So he's going to be working with students. It may teach him how to dance, they may teach him how to fish, they may teach him how to read. So we have a lot of fun things to engage our students. And we've talked about a podcast for a long time. We've had some capacity issues in getting podcast, but the equipment is in, and we expect our podcast to be available by the end of the summer. Thank you. That was fast. Any questions?
So my report is not over, but I do want to pause to acknowledge Monica and Maria. This is the communications team, 100% of them. And up until the intern, everything you've seen here was just solely these two individuals. So I want to acknowledge you and thank you for all the hard work. And I'll open it up for any questions from board members before I move on in my report.
I have a couple of questions, Monica. I also want to thank you guys for that. I just downloaded the app. I didn't know it was an app. Really nice, really clean. With the social media platforms, we have Facebook, LinkedIn.
And Instagram.
Okay, are we going to get Twitter? Is there
You know what? I would be very honest in that. Facebook takes us about 15 hours a week just in getting content, photos and that. So it would really be a capacity issue for now.
Is there any way that we can incorporate like a student who has maybe like an academic lab to give them something to do instead of just going to a class and not doing work? I'm only
You mean
speaking
like on
because-
Twitter and that? Oh,
Yeah, I'm only speaking because I have a student who has a couple of academic labs, and I think if we can say, hey, the communication team needs somebody to help with this, so this week we want you to post this, and this is going to be your assignment. I don't know how we'll make it better for them just to have an understanding. And we want you to go to school to better yourself, and you can nap at home.
true. And there is a lot of planning and pre-planning with that, but I think that's a really good suggestion, and we'll take it back. And we do have, this is the first year we've had interns in our marketing department, so thank you. I think that would be, yep, that's a good
My
suggestion.
second question, I apologize, I had a lot of questions.
No.
Other than the interns, how are we getting more student involvement? I really love the idea of a podcast. I think that would be amazing. So is there any way that we can, like, what resources are we reaching now? I know you said we had the equipment, but
Well, and also there's, thank you, there's training and bringing them up and the brand. I mean, yes, there's lots of opportunities. Although I do believe at the high school they are doing some podcast. I'm not as familiar with that. But yes, again, I think there could be opportunities to bring interns in, but we need to have capacity to manage the process and all of that. And right now we're, it's capacity, but I love these ideas. It's just really having staff to help manage that process.
one more question.
Oh, good.
This is the last one.
No.
Have we reached out like to volunteers, to individuals like in Beloit area, Janesville area, who has that going on? And I know a couple who will be willing to come in for free just to help the students get the ball rolling for a podcast. And I know for a fact that we have probably the most vocal students in this area, and I really would like to see them on a mic and give them an opportunity to speak the truth and build our brand. So I don't know if I can help out in any way. I'm more than happy to.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Thank you, too. Oh, wait. Go for it.
I want to say thank you for the presentation, to see the comprehensive work that is going forward. Especially when you think about this area of communication, I think that what I would say for myself as a board member, I'm aware of the challenges that our district has, but I am saddened sometimes with the negativity that is on social media about our district. As board president, and even a board member and a parent, but I'm a Beloiter also. 1995, graduate of Beloit Memorial High School. Education professional. Education is a service. We have people's children, so we definitely understand critiques when things do not meet parents' expectations. But as an elected official, and I think about the seriousness of the things that we've done in the last year, and sometimes there's just pure hate that comes our way. The way that our students' performance, academic performance, has been described, the way that the work and efforts of our teachers has been denigrated, I'm thankful to know that, you know, we're not trying to market our way out of our achievement, but that someone is telling the positive stories and the positive experiences that people are having in the school district of Beloit. For all the state tests and assessments, and these are what our scores are, the schools are publishing in the Beloit Daily News the honor roll, and parents are sharing how their students have made honor roll. The number of academic awards and other presentations that our students are winning, whether it's essentially Ellington or Destination Imagination, our students are doing great things. Our students are more than just test scores. And, you know, our core function to make sure that students can read and write and they can function in our society, we are meeting that goal. Everybody wants to know, is their child at, above, or below where they should be? But we're doing other things that are adding value to students' lives. And so I'm thankful for the work that you all are doing to tell that story, because for those teachers and for those students, it's encouraging to read about that. So thank you.
Thank you, President Levy. Thank you.
I had one more comment. For the graduation, I noticed on my Facebook, we have all of the seniors are they graduating?
Yes, and actually, that's a project our intern did. She reached out to all the high school seniors, sent them emails, called them, followed up, and then they filled out a form, and I think we have them going up through the end of May. Yep.
That's awesome. I would really like to see, I don't know about anybody else, if they're planning on going into college, if they plan on going into a trade, if they're going to take a year off. I think that'd be really awesome to get the younger kids to see that you don't always have to go to college. You don't always have to have that mindset as I'm leaving high school, I have to go to college. Like these individuals have graduated. It's a big accomplishment. And I really think that if the communication team could get that going, as in, I know I've seen a lot of kids that's going to the HBCUs, and it blew me away how many students we have in Beloit that was going to be going to college, and they get to pick what college they go to. I think that's something that we really need to focus on. Like President Levy was saying, like it's hard for us being. I'm not from Beloit. Well, 97 is when I moved here. Close enough. But I think that we have some amazing kids, and I think if we can highlight, especially when they're graduating, and they have their mind set up to if they're going to go to college or if they're not going to go to college, I think that'd be a really good thing for our next intern next year to really focus on. So, and I really appreciate you guys working this. I do.
Thank you, Board Member Winfield, and you have a lot of tasks you put before me, so I'll be getting on those. Thank you.
I appreciate the comments, and definitely the team well deserved for that. And this has been our first semester working with an intern. It was, a thought like, can we take on taking a high school student and we've had good experiences. So we start small, we grow from that. To Board President Levy's comments about, when elements in communities, whether they be in our community or far away, just commenting because social media reduces distance. When people go low, we go high. And so we stay at that level of, we are more than a test score. We are doing the work, but we celebrate the whole child, and the whole child means that we celebrate everything from essentially Ellington to Destination Imagination to junior nights to our graduates who are choosing everything from colleges to careers to military service, and even just taking a year to figure out what they want to do next. It's great, and to be able to get that out in efficient, effective ways is greatly recognized. And it's no small feat when you have established universities who have departments the size of our entire district staff, and they're reaching out to us to say, how did you have something here? Like, what was the mindset? What was the thoughts? What were the questions you were asking? It's great to share those positive things. So as we transition and continue with the presentation, I want to just bring the full board an update in terms of conversations, again, with our budget, transitioning back to our longstanding conversation around where we are with the budget. We've made some updates, and I know that we'll have a board report about the committee meeting where we've had Baird come in and give us some budget forecast updates. The forecasting tool is powerful insofar as what we know to be true and what we assume to be true. And the more that we can move those assumptions to realities, the stronger that forecasting tool becomes. So while we've started with our budget forecast of 10.5 million short and have certain milestones that we projected, we have made some assumptions within the forecasting tool, and we have some decisions that are coming before the board even tonight to hopefully take some of those assumptions and make them realities. And as we start to know those things, we will start to update those budget assumption tools. Now, this is a very long list of bullet points, but I don't intend to read through each of these pieces, but I wanted to highlight, when we think of a forecasting tool, oftentimes we say, well, we want this, so what's the outcome? These are all pieces that are built into that forecasting tool so that we can come up with those numbers of like $10.5 million deficit and so on and so forth. We talked about a tax incremental district, or a TID, being closed. In fact, 2 of them. So one of the assumptions on the revenue side is that we believe that there's going to be $3 million coming into the district, and that could be in next year's budget. So that money can go to help close that budget, but not this year, but next year. We also talk about closing out some other funds and taking some of our federal dollars, those ESSER dollars, and putting them into our budget forecasting tool so that we can manage those expense sides. So as we read through these bullets, you will start to see how certain assumptions, as we start to know if these are true or not and make adjustments, how they're going to affect the bottom line. You can see we're making assumptions around our independent charter school, the Lincoln Academy, and how much enrollment from the school district Beloit might end up there, and what impact that would be, as well as what about our other federal grants, so our AGR, or our title grants. Some of the expenditure sides, you will hear me say from time to time that when we budget, I always tell people, you budget retail and you buy wholesale. And that's so that when you build your budget, you want to assume that you're going to pay more for something when you're putting it into a budget than what you hopefully will actually pay for that. One, if it does cost more than you expect, hopefully it doesn't go above what you budgeted, but if it's under, then you have a little gap that you can use for unexpected expenses. In our expenditure side, what we're assuming, because we had some open positions, we always budgeted those open positions for maximum salary and maximum benefits. Well, as we close some of those pieces out, what that means for our next year's budget is we're making a $7 million budget adjustment within salary and benefits. Now, that's a significant number, and as that shakes out with all of these other assumptions, that drives that budget deficit. We're also making some projections around salaries, and a proposal coming before the board tonight is about cost of living increase for next year. If we set that decision tonight, we will take one of those assumptions, actually two of those assumptions, and make them a reality. And in the forecasting tool, they will be locked in. So now our forecasting tool becomes a lot more sensitive and realistic to what the reality could be. And then at the bottom, how this figures out with our debt and levy mill rate, we are really talking about, we've been very fortunate to be proactive in paying off our referendum debt. We have saved millions of dollars in interest payments by prepaying our debt. That prepayment has allowed us to be in a situation where we can have conversations around referendums and so forth. However, if those things don't happen, what's going to happen is that our mill rate is going to go down. There's just no way to go to get around that conversation. So as we make all of these assumptions, know that these are just a small sampling of all the adjustments that Wendy LaPointe and Baird Financial are putting into a forecasting tool that help us determine what these numbers at the end of the day look like. So enough of budget 201. We had 101 will be coming back with Lisa voicing, but 201 was those assumptions. Where we are in staffing, we talked about displaced staff, and I'm happy to report that we are closing in on finding new spots for individuals who have been displaced. It was 3. We heard that one of those have been placed, so we're down to 2 individuals who are on the displaced list, who are permanent employees that are left to be placed. We still evaluate all new vacancies, so any resignations, we don't just assume that they're going to be posted. We always evaluate them against, are these positions that we can push pause on for now and open up something else in the system so that we can manage that budget deficit. And last but certainly not least, our summer school is in full swing. We've been enrolling individuals, and our strategic plan had its first meeting on April 25th, and we're only 2 weeks away, a little under 2 weeks away from our next design planning team. Our goal is to wrap things up on June 20th so that on June 21st at the regular board meeting, Mr. Lewis and myself will be presenting the draft strategic plan for the board to start to discern through and hopefully adopt by July 5th. Any comments, questions, or clarifications?
Board members, any questions?
Hi, I have a couple, if that's okay. So if we could go back to the budget assumption slide for a moment.
Certainly.
I just had a few questions. In committee, I know we talked about, I know one of the committee members brought up longevity pay, and that was one of our priorities, and I was looking at the expenditure assumptions. Dr. Keyser, could you discuss how, I know we're waiting for the pay equity studies results, which I just heard in the committee we're anticipating being shared in June or July. Can you talk about how that factors into the expenditure assumptions, please?
So right now we don't have that factored in, so that is even broader than an assumption because it's an unknown. But to the question, which is an important question that brings us back to last October, in our work with the consulting firm Evergreen Solutions, one of the pieces that we had them do a number of pieces, but one of the pieces was develop a new compensation philosophy that would put all of our employee groups into one compensation philosophy. One of those pieces that we've talked about was incorporating mechanisms for longevity pay. In the past, our longevity pay has been an add-on pay over and above the salary matrix, and so we've shared that historical knowledge with them, and so we are just getting some draft proposals on what a compensation philosophy could be, and we are providing feedback. And when we present, one of the questions we would, and one of the checklists we would present on is how does longevity pay factor into the ultimate recommendation and proposal to the board around what that new compensation plan would be. That being said, that compensation plan will be over and above what is currently being built into our forecasting tool. What's being built in right now is the current cost of living increase for next year. And then if the board ultimately approves a new compensation philosophy, we'll have to go back into the forecasting tool and build in that new compensation philosophy for next year moving forward. Does that help?
Yeah, so just to clarify that, I guess how significant of a change might that be? Because you talk about it going above and beyond, and there are some really good things that I'm seeing in our budget forecasting that makes me feel good, like the no reduction in staffing levels included, and things like that. I'm just wondering if that longevity piece puts any of the kind of the highlights of this in jeopardy.
No, well, it's going to be over and above, and it's the preliminary numbers. I would hesitate to put a range out there at this point because we're giving them feedback as we get closer. I'll be more confident in giving the board and the community a range around the different philosophies that are out there. As far as would it put anything in jeopardy, I would say no, simply because if we had moved to a new compensation philosophy, kind of like or very similar to what Mr. Vedra talked about when we made our last adjustment three years ago and went to this $1,250 per year increase for teachers, there was some significant work to the steps and lanes, and what ended up happening was this compression issue. One of the things that was proposed but ultimately not approved was longevity pay. So it's this new compensation philosophy is going to mimic that work, and so that work, once we have something that we can forecast to, we will bring that and we can model that.
No, that sounds great. And then my only other question was, I see another expenditure assumption is the decreased open enrollment. Have we done exit interviews, or do we have data on the nature of the reasons that people are enrolling out to help us make the adjustments and planning necessary to decrease that open enrollment?
We're actually working on strengthening that system with the independent charter school coming into our systems, and them and that entity working with different set of rules than what we've been used to. We've had to reevaluate our approach to families open enrolling in and open enrolling out. So one of the questions we've been talking about is how can we revamp our data collection tool, similar to an exit interview, and ask families why exactly are they leaving, to the degree that they feel comfortable explaining that. But at this time, we don't have any hard data to share.
No, that's perfect. I'm glad that that's been planned, because it's my understanding that have we gotten 25 students back from the charter school?
Yeah, I believe that at one point that was the number. I don't know what the most recent number is.
Yeah, because if we're going to look at that, and I guess my reason for asking was twofold. One, just to understand, and that sounds like we're right on track with revamping and kind of getting more of that qualitative data. That's great. And I'm just curious too, how we incorporate an anticipated number of students or percentage of students who end up kind of coming back into the district. Because I understand a lot of the board members who are seated here weren't here for that presentation we had quite a while ago that explained that if a student enrolls out and then comes back after that first Friday, we get some of that funding back, but it doesn't count until the following budget. So it
Correct.
gets really complicated, and I just wanted to make sure that that was all being factored in. So I appreciate you taking the time to address that.
Yeah, absolutely. Budgeting at the school, on public school level is nuanced to say the least. And yes, to your point, when we have students moving back and forth between school districts, money leaves, but having the money return is always lagging by at least a semester, so that always carries it over into the next budget cycle.
No, for sure. And I guess just like my final thoughts, and thanks for letting me take up some time here because I had a lot to say on this, so thank you. I mean, I guess ultimately when we're being asked to look at this later down, when we have more of that information about longevity pay and kind of like this information, we're going to need that so that we can prioritize like the programming, right, that we need for the students. And so I just want to make sure we're framing it around like what's best for kids and all that. So definitely appreciate you taking the time to address that. Thanks.
No problem.
So a couple questions. One, on that same slide, I think the projected out for this school year is 335 to Lincoln.
Correct. That's making an assumption. Lincoln Academy is at about 60% capacity, and again, making certain assumptions. They have about a capacity of like 370 students before they're at capacity.
Okay. And so so that's in addition to the 364, 365 that were out this year?
Correct.
Okay, so that around another $3 million or so?
Potentially. Again, and that's Lincoln Academy. Lincoln Academy's marketing is because of their location, certainly concentrated in the Beloit area, but they have students coming from places like Clinton and Janesville and others as well.
All right, and then other projections all the way through about 700, 900 possibly in our forecast that might go out?
So the capacity of the school by next year will be at its limit. So at one point it levels off, and making some of those assumptions that, okay, we've got 335 and then anticipating graduates and then people moving in, we've kind of leveled it off at 100. But then again, it is so new in the forecasting tool, we're making some significant assumptions. So as we move into this new space, our historical data will guide our future.
Right, because it was this year when we kind of did not account for that 3.3 million.
Correct.
So next year, somewhere around 6 or something, it's in the forecast.
Right. So we're assuming that we're going to have that additional 300 that are out. If that number ends up being under that, then we're forecasting tighter than what it actually will be.
Okay. So in the expenditure assumption, the right sizing salary budget by decreasing 7 million.
Correct.
What are some of those to create the 7 million?
So the best way to explain it, kind of using that same philosophical belief of budget retail and buy wholesale, is when we had an open position, let's say we had a teaching position, we don't know exactly who's going to fill that position. So what we will assume in our budget is max out our typical range for that. So if it's typical that we get a bachelor's in there, we'll max out the bachelor and the range for our comps for starting teachers. And then we'll assume that it's a family with max benefits. That way, if we come in and we get a brand new teacher fresh out of college and so forth, and we plug that actual expenditure in there, now we're actually spending less than what we budgeted, and that becomes a savings. We've done that historically, and so in this climate, we are trying to take some of that wiggle room out of the budget and try to get closer to actual numbers. As we forecast forward, when you do that across the system with 800 plus employees, it ended up being around $7 million that we were able to what we call right size. We felt comfortable taking that out of the system between positions that we push pause on, we're not going to budget for, those go to zero, and then actuals that we are putting in there. So that then significantly drops the deficit going into next year.
Okay. And then lastly, kind of looking at the slide that was presented in the committee meeting earlier with the mill rate for the 22-23 year, even as we're exploring with school perceptions, possible referendum, capital or operational, what is, for 22-23, are we dropping, or how is that? I mean, the graphic looks one way, but just kind of.
Yep. So the graphic that was presented in committee does not take into account any defeasance of our current referendum debt. So our last 2 years of being a mill rate of $10.10 per $1,000 valuation is built upon both the mill rate for our budget plus the defeasance, so the levying of prepaying that debt. So those two amounts together added up to $10.10. You take that out, and all you do is levy straight for the budget. That's what the mill rate in the committee is representing. So any amount of money that we choose to pay towards paying off a referendum, or let's say that there was a referendum up for a vote and that vote passed, that is that additional money above that mill rate that's projected, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other board members have questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to committee and other board reports. Is there a report from the Business Operations and Finance Committee?
Yes, there is. And I will try to be as brief as I possibly can. It was a very good meeting today. So the first thing we covered was the financial reports for March of 2022. That's in our consent agenda for tonight. We also had a couple of discussion items that came up. So any of these topics for the board members that weren't taking part in that meeting or listening during that, feel free to read through it. If you have questions, reach out to Dr. Kieser and or me, and I'll pass them along as needed. So the first one is the SVPP grant project. So we received a grant for security for the district, and part of it is that we have to put some money into it also. So what they're looking at is increasing the points where we have to swipe in and out in the district, allowing, like at the high school, to see when doors are open and closed going out of the building, which gives the security a notification that that door has been open so that they can possibly address situations before they get to the students or if students are leaving the campus. So figure out why they're doing that. Another thing was talking about the Robinson Elementary School flooring RFP. So they talked about changing the tiling that they have on the floor there because some of the tiles are starting to lift, and the new type of flooring that they're putting in doesn't require any waxing, which I'm excited about because that means less work for our staff. And apparently, it also looks absolutely amazing at the building that we've already done it at. And then we've already talked a little bit about the preliminary 2022-2023 budget model. If you have some time, I would say go take a look at it just so you can see all the numbers and what is going to be happening. And as Dr. Kieser talked about, there's some things that we're trying to do now to help kind of solidify that model for these coming years, which one of them is on our consent agenda for tonight, which I will talk about real briefly here. But one major thing that I want to talk about for the budget forecast model is that drop in mill rate for the coming year. So we're going from a 10-10 mill rate to $2.91 for our mill rate, which is a pretty significant drop. So if you want to know more about it, if you watch this or go back in time and watch this video again, there's a little bit of discussion on it, but I'm sure we will be bringing that up in future committee meetings. Some of the action items that came in that are coming up for tonight are the Bmhs Lab update. They're updating 4 labs, so getting them new equipment in those computer rooms, and then also the Apple MacBook refresh, so giving the teachers new equipment to use. And if I remember correctly, you said that from the savings, or the savings that we're getting from like the MacBook refresh and I'm trying to remember the other part of it, but it's also helping to cover the audio and visual needs for the BMHS, correct?
Correct.
So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. And the cost of living update that we've passed from committee to come to the full board tonight is one of those topics that we're discussing that helps solidify our forecasting model for these coming years. So that includes that flat increase of $1,250 for educators and a 2% increase for all other employee groups. So if we approve that tonight, what that does is help strengthen that model so we can build a better idea of what we're going to be expecting to see in the coming years. I believe I covered everything. Is there anything else?
That's it. Sound like it? Sounds like the meeting I attended. Thank you, Board Member Anderson. I will take Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services has not met for the month, and there's a new chair. But we did meet April 19th, and just a review, Coordinated Comprehension Early Intervening Services was discussed, Even Start Family Literacy Program presentation, along with our Black Hawk Tech partner. Our bilingual programs, there was an update, and curricular resources, BH 365 for Black History as an addition to our social studies curriculum. We did receive the action item of our summer school was presented, and Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services will meet in our next, we're first and third, in the third week. Our governance committee, we met and we discussed the CESA 6 evaluation model as a part of our superintendent evaluation, and also continue to discuss board development. Is there a legislative update? I saw that Board Member Levy did join the meeting.
So during the handoff, typically I give my legislative updates on the third Tuesday. If the new legislative representative would like to touch base and would like me to do the one for May, I am more than happy to do that, but that will happen on May 17th.
All right, thank you. And any policy committee updates?
Yes, the policy committee will meet tomorrow, May the 4th at 5:30 in the Black Education Center boardroom. We'll be covering policies 377, interscholastic athletics and activities, 377 Rule 1, interscholastic activities and athletics and activities program rules and guidelines, and Rule 2 of that same policy, which is high school athletics and athletics code and activities code. And also policy 830, which is public use of school facilities. Also Rule 1, use of school facility regulations, and Rule 2, which is kitchen facility use.
All right, thank you. We're now at 5A, School Perceptions Board Self-Assessment Report.
Okay, so as we've been having for the past few meetings here, we have Rob, and before Rob jumps in, I failed to mention as part of the report and update, a piece of communication, positive news was we received a proclamation from the city for Teacher Appreciation Week, and so just want to share a shout out to all of our teachers. Well-deserved and continued support from City Council and the city. So that proclamation will be framed and put here in the boardroom. So Rob is here again tonight, hot off the press, our board self-assessment report, which we are now doing twice a year. So this is the follow-up from last spring or I should say last fall, where we did the self-assessment. So Rob, take it away.
All right. Let me share my screen. Oops. Let's see here. May have been the wrong one. Oh, maybe not. Just went through a move, so everything is different and my screens are different and I'm living among boxes and nothing is normal. So that does look positive though. We did get to you. So I do want to talk a little bit about your board report, talk a little bit about what's in the green, what's in the red, growth that you've made, and some direction for moving forward. So this report, like Dan said, is pretty hot off the presses. So I believe you got a copy of it. Is that true? It was passed around?
Yes, so there's hard copies, and then it's also in board docs for any board and community members who are remote.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So this just got over to Dan earlier today. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, or if you're new to the school board, the annual board development tool was recently conducted just a few weeks back, and we do this in partnership with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, which is the state level chapter member of the National Association of the School Boards. And those two groups work to put together the key work of school boards, which is kind of the research model about what they believe makes for a fully functioning board and what makes for board success so that you can lead your district for better student achievement and better student participation, engagement, and whatnot. So when we're talking about the objective of the annual board development tool, we kind of simply say, are you on the same page or not? You know, that's kind of how we describe it. What you see up on your screen here is there's really three more formal ways to describe what this does. And that's if you're new to the school board, what are your roles and responsibilities as determined by the research and framework and the key work of school boards? Even if you're a veteran though, what are some areas in which you're aligned and some areas where further dialogue is needed? And then where you have some board members expressing that they might have an interest in receiving additional information or training, especially depending on what board committees they sit on and just related to what I just heard a few minutes back. Now the questions in here are broken into 9 sections or 9 different pages, which you may be familiar with if you've taken the survey already over the past few years. Those include data-driven decision-making, board operations, culture, planning, budgeting, district operations, community engagement, policy, and vision. And all of those items in here are measured on the same scale. So either something is not achieved or it's not started. And that's something where there are immediate improvements that could be considered to fully achieved on the other end of the spectrum. This is a notable strength that could serve as a model for other districts. And then not sure is simply that. So it's an area where either you don't have the observation of it or you just don't have the knowledge to speak knowledgeably about the specific item. So those 9 pages that you see here, the questions roped together for each page. Where are the pages or where are the groups of questions where you are doing particularly well, and where are there some areas where you're doing work? Well, in terms of board operations, that is a particular notable strength. And on a different spreadsheet here, let me talk a little bit about what those were. So board operations are things like, are our board meetings effective and efficient? Are we using our committees effectively? Are we adhering to our open meetings laws and whatnot? The next highest was in terms of your culture. And that's exactly what it sounds like. So your culture includes questions like your mutual respect, the fact that you can have differences of opinion without delving into personality conflicts, that you have professional behavior, and so on. So in terms of the 2 areas that are really going well, those are the top 2. In areas where we're seeing down towards the bottom are your district operations and your data-driven decision-making. So in terms of district operations, some questions there that you may see. Do you have a process where you regularly communicate your academic priorities and your achievement results to the parents and the public? Is your staff authority and responsibility very well defined? Is it granted at the appropriate level? So those are some questions that you'll find in the district operations page. And then the score here at a 2.13, so you're right around the partially achieved for your bottom score. Data-driven decision-making is to the extent to which you are disaggregating data and looking at various subgroups to ensure successes of all students. Are you reviewing data for program performance as well? And is your curriculum ensuring culturally relevant learning experiences for all of your students? So those are the average scores per page. A slightly different way to think about that is a key work of school board's index report. So there are 5 indexes plus equity that we build. Now, the way this is a little bit different is that we may pull, for instance, some questions from culture, some questions from policy, some questions from vision, and so on, to feed, say, a vision index. But what does a vision index mean? A vision is an effective school board where you're establishing a clear vision with high expectations for quality teaching and learning, all in the name of supporting student outcomes. Accountability, that index is defined as your high academic standards, your transparency, and that your accountability undergird a world-class education. Policy is how your board sustainably exercises power to serve students. So those are the guidelines, your practices, your policies that you set not only for yourselves, but for the district as a whole. Community leadership is the public advocacy and community engagement work that you do. So are you sharing your concerns and actions with the public? And are you building support not only for the people that are in this particular room, virtually or otherwise, but in partnership with the community? Your relationships, both with and among the school board, but also your district leaders as well, regardless of whether they are a board member or a hired position, say whether it's Dan or your other admin team members. And then finally, equity. And this is the key words here are all students. Are all students being supported with the support that they need in order to reach the common goals that you have set for your students? So in other words, do all students have the opportunity to meet the expectations that we set? So those particular scores are what you see down here. So each of those index areas, in terms of relationships, and you're going to see this a lot throughout the data that I show tonight, your relationships among each other is above the state average over the course of the last year. So you're doing particularly well in that area. And then in terms of descending order, where you deviate from the state average, your score that's slightly below would be community leadership. Your 0.14 of a point below there. The next area where you're below the state average would be policy, followed by accountability, vision, and then equity. Now, one thing that I always tell boards here is, this isn't necessarily completely, I don't want to say how well we are doing, but remember that you're also evaluating the extent to which your resources and your support are in place. So in other words, a different way to say that would be maybe the supports and resources that you have in an area, you might think are going particularly well, but you may just want to see more of them. So it's not only an evaluation of how are we currently doing, but in terms of how are we doing, is it enough? So there's kind of 2 pieces to the puzzle there in terms of how you're evaluating yourself. In terms of the item comparison to the state average then, so now we're looking at every single question in the survey, how are you doing compared to the state average? Now, certainly I won't go through all of these because there's a lot of information here. I think the best way to describe this would be what are the 5 or 6 areas that you're doing particularly well compared to the state average, and where are there some areas compared to that state average that maybe some additional work could be done. Now, first thing I want to see here is that there's a lot of green, and I think I was in person with you last year, and if you look back at that report, there was more red, I believe, than green, and I don't know what happened over the last year, but strong steps were taken moving forward. Apparently, you've really done some good work in terms of how you've structured your board, and I think the top 2 rows here are evidence of that. So, for instance, we value differences of opinion and do not let them degenerate into personality conflicts, and our board models mutual respect and professional behavior. You can't get higher than a 4, and your score is a 4. So everybody said 4. Everybody said you were fully achieved on those 2 metrics. There is nowhere to go up there. You did it. So that's really exciting in terms of these 2 things here. Some other areas that you're well above the state average as well is we're honoring our decisions outside of board meetings. So in other words, you're not trying to undermine each other. And another way to read that would be, as a board member, I may not fully agree with the decision, but we're here, we've agreed, the majority has spoken, so now I'm going to go along with it. That's also an area where you seem to be doing well. Discussing legislative issues during your meetings and having a legislative advocacy process in partnership with WASB, or the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. Those are some areas that are really going well compared to what you're seeing across the state. Some areas where you may want to continue thinking about, focusing resources. Remember, there's a lot of items here, so I scrolled down a few pages. We have a process that ensures our students of color are participating in advanced coursework, the arts and extracurricular programs at the same level as our white students. That's one area where you deviate the most from the state average. And in kind of a similar vein, benchmarking test results with districts with similar demographics and prior performance over previous years. So not only are we disaggregating, but then once we disaggregate, do we have a process in place to make sure that students that are not doing as well as we want them to be, do we have structures and resources in place for them to get them where we want to be? Successful at attracting and retaining high quality employees would be another area I would suggest for future focus. And then the final two where you deviate from the state average is communicating academic priorities and achievement results to the parents and public, and examining district data into various subgroups. So I would say, kind of when I'm looking at this, the areas that are really going well seem to be your interpersonal relationships, how you're getting along with one another. Again, the extent to which once we make a decision, we follow through with that, we're supporting each other, and we're not trying to undermine each other's decisions. I would say the common thread here in terms of areas where everybody is saying we want to do more work is really kind of that equity piece. Are we looking at various subgroups to making sure that all groups, regardless of how populous they are in our district, is everybody doing everybody meeting the expectations that we want? Are we disaggregating in the way that we want? And then once we disaggregate, what is that district telling us? And I would say kind of the one that's a little bit different here is your success at attracting and retaining high quality employees. A different way to look at this data then would be longitudinal. So not only then comparisons to the state, but here are your comparisons to yourselves. So this is, where have we taken some really strong leaps forward compared to where we were previously? I wasn't surprised to see strong leaps forward here with those two scores that you can't get any better than you're already at, which is modeling mutual respect and professional behavior, evaluating differences of opinion without letting them degenerate into personality conflicts, and evaluating the superintendent at least annually against clear goals so that not only Dan knows how he's being evaluated, but that there's consensus on the board that your evaluation process is the way you want it to look. Looks like you took strong steps forward relative to yourselves here on those three metrics. Compared to where you were before, you also said that your board meetings are effective and efficient. And then you had some ties, honoring decisions, encouraging constructive and professional discussions at board meetings, and that your board committees are meetings are used effectively. You also took strong steps forward on those particular metrics. On the other side of that coin then, again, not a lot of red here. So I have to scroll all the way down. Of all the items in here, there are two where you're exactly the same as where you were before. And there are only 4 that according to the respondent data that we got here, I would say where you're taking a step backward. So I'm just going to scroll through here just for visual sake. Got a lot of rows here, and that's a lot of green. So this is very exciting. Frankly, this is a lot more fun for me to present. Otherwise, sometimes there's a bit of the beat up on the messenger here, which is not fun for me. But again, there are only some areas here where I'm seeing maybe you want to focus more work. And that's no surprise here, a very, very consistent data, which tells me that it's good, credible data. Continuing to examining district data. There was a small step forward down there. Recognizing teachers and schools for outstanding performance. That's probably timely and relevant considering all the work that I just heard earlier on in the meeting in terms of your communication. Sounds like you're already having a plan in place to do those kinds of things. And what I heard Jawan mention earlier on in terms of let's make sure that people understand the good work that we're doing here and get that out. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see this go up next year because it sounds like you're already thinking about how to do these things. And then 2 slight declines. Again, these are hundredths of a point difference. We work with teachers and other staff to update our employee handbook and personnel policies. and we're successful at attracting and retaining high quality employees. So as I look through these, I'm seeing a lot of overlaps in terms of where you want to go and areas that you want to focus on, both relative to the state and relative to where you've been over the last few years. Your 15 highest standard deviation items. So for everybody in the audience that's a little rusty on their stats, I put together a definition that I use quite frequently here. The fancy way of saying this is that a standard deviation is a measure of how dispersed the data is in relation to the mean. An easier way to frame that is, are respondent answers all over the board, or are people roughly saying the same thing on each question? So an example of that would be, if you, and I made up data here that's not relevant for you at all on purpose, if I had a data set that had 45, 47, 49, 50, 51, 53, and 55, the average of those numbers is 50. And the standard deviation is fairly small. I can have data that's spread out from 1 to 99. My average is the same. That has not changed at all. But my standard deviation is much, much wider here. So again, the way to look at standard deviation is, how spread out is the data? Are people mostly answering in the same ways? You know, are most people saying fully achieved? Are most people saying that it's not fully achieved? Or is it kind of all over the board, and some people are saying fully achieved, some people are saying not achieved, some people are on our way, and the data is kind of, you know, think of the dartboard with darts all over it, or are darts all kind of in the middle and everybody's saying the same thing? So areas where you're kind of, I would say, again, all over the dartboard, people are saying different things to different questions. We have a schedule and protocol to review data and program performance. We regularly receive updates on the district's targeted programming, so things like your curriculum, your alternative ed, your special education, G&T education. And we invite legislators to our schools for tours and discussions of important education issues. So those, again, are the top three where you're seeing that your board members are answering very differently depending on what seat they fit in. Then, and this is where I'm going to take a slight pause. Now, this again too is every single question divided up by page so that you can see the specific average for every single item in here. This is excellent data for you to dig in and maybe let it marinate for a little bit. But this is where I would pause my interpretation and follow up with questions that you may have, or other interpretations that you would like to see.
Board members? All right, well, I'll start. I think that, you know, for the current board members and those that may be listening at home, as we approach this work, the key work of school boards, one of the things that we discussed as a board was trying to center ourselves in what is the work that this Board of Education is supposed to do. When we look at these prompts, they outline that work, and I'm going to take a victory lap for us as a community, as elected leaders and those that were appointed to serve. This public service of trying to provide education for our students, to be good employers to the people that are teaching our children and providing education and all the services that are necessary. It's a heavy lift in this community. And one of the things that I think would help people understand is that for what our work is, and many people are misinformed about what the work of the Board of Education is. When we looked at this survey, one of the things that we try to do is focus on what is it that the 7 of us can do and do our part so that our district begins to move out of the ditch that we feel we're in collectively. We got here over time, and so it takes time to get to a different place. So we are proud that we have significant achievement in our relationships, treating each other with respect and agreeing to work together through board development. Sometimes this is the part where you say that, like we would say about our students are more than just the data. But on page 6, we honor our decisions outside of the board meetings not undermining majority decisions with which some disagreed. The state average is 3.14 and Beloit's average is 3.86. But what does that really mean? That's like a decision about how do we conduct schooling during COVID, like our masking policy. Those are difficult decisions to make, but we made a decision together. It was not a unanimous decision, but we followed through with that plan. That's an accomplishment for us as a district. At the bottom of page 6, we evaluate the superintendent at least annually against clear goals with performance criteria that include measures of student achievement. We're working with Dr. Kieser on the CISA 6 model, but prior to the boards that, prior to the most recent evaluations over the last 3 years, superintendent has not been here, or the board that was seated did not conduct an evaluation. Those are achievements for us in trying to do the job that's supposed to be done for our community. Even at the bottom of page 7, we have an effective orientation process for new board members. Through the election, we have board member Anderson and board member Winfield are new to the board. Board members Miller and Schneider were re-elected. But to have those 2 new board members say that they feel like they're joining a board that has done something over the last year, that was very satisfying. And for them to feel like they felt welcome through the processes that we have achieved, that was a level of personal satisfaction, because that's what we're actually trying to do, to demonstrate for our community a spirit of cooperation so that we can move forward this work for our children and help them reach their goals, because it's all about the children for us. But there's some other spaces in 8. On page 8, our budget process includes determining if and when referenda are needed. We're doing our work with Baird and school perceptions. And then, even as I mentioned earlier, we have effective public input and complaint resolution process. Representing, 6,000 or close to 5,000, 6,000 students and families. We understand that sometimes expectations will not be met, but making sure that those complaints are resolved and people know where to go, so that as we work together, we can come to a resolution and reconciliation when there are problems. Those are just some of the things that we are looking at personally. When we got to the section about data, there were some questions, but some of these things, it's like in 1 year, there's a lot to do. But I think that we have made concerted effort. And the thing that we decided to do is that we'll take this survey 2 times a year. And the purpose of taking it 2 times a year is so that these new board members who came on in April are able to familiarize themselves with the work and then reflect on that and help to focus us again on what is the work that we should be doing. And so we've made the commitment to do that twice. I'll say, like, when I participated in the survey last year, having just got elected to the board in April and taking the survey in April, I think, like, when you're trying to improve, you got to be honest about where you're at. So I'll say I was a hard grader, and I wrote comments. I wrote comments again. And my comments and my hard grading, because I think if we're going to improve, you have to be honest. As we talked about earlier with the marketing presentation, that even as we're trying to make strides, there are people who will detract from the work that we're moving forward. So I found it interesting when the comments or the critical things that I put about our performance so that we would move forward showed up as someone trying to say, look, this is how dysfunctional this board is. And so if they use those comments in that data last time, will they use these comments in this data this time, that we see ourselves 1 year later where we're at? And for all of us together, when we sit down to do board development, is to look at other items that we'll collaboratively discuss and say, what things do we still need to continue to improve on, but this gives us a focus. So I'm thankful for the board members that I've served with, and we hope that in this work that we have done, when you look at the number of projects that we have lined up to demonstrate to our community the work we are trying to do to stabilize our district, to help our students reach their dreams and goals, to make this a satisfying workplace for our employees, and to honor their commitment to us. And that was a little windy there, but I had to get that off my chest.
You had things to celebrate. It's better to be windy for things to celebrate.
Anybody else?
I just was going to say I really appreciate the data. I think me being in the community, knowing the hard work and dedication that you individuals put in, even the two board members who was here before me and board member Brian Anderson, I think this data is really good, and it should be like really broadcasted to the community, as in like we're really trying to grow, we're really trying to be a better board, and not for us, just for the collective of the better good of this district. And I think in my mind, I always wondered why things was happening on the board. I mean, you read the newspaper and you see the Facebook comments, but this right here really sums it up. Like, we're working together. We're really trying to be good for the students, for the teachers, for the administration, and trying to work and trying to get the understanding that we can be better together. But I'm the one to echo. I mean, you guys deserve a good hand, because it was some hard work put into this, and just to see the numbers and just to understand where we was at and where we are now, it's a big accomplishment. So I appreciate you guys.
What I happen to pull up here, one of my suggestions moving forward. So, you certainly know that where you stand as a board. What will be very instructive then over the next couple of months, I pulled up your community survey that's currently at print, is how you're doing amongst each other in this boardroom then. What is the perception of the community when you get that data back too? Because that will tell you then if we're doing something very well, or we believe we're doing something very well. Does our community also agree with us, or do they disagree with us on a particular metric? So say, for instance, communicates with me effectively. No matter who I am, if I have a household in the district, I'll be able to answer that question. So you'll be able to see kind of, how does this compare between us, and how does this compare from the community writ large? And I think that's going to be really interesting. And obviously the questions aren't apples to apples, because you are school experts. You can answer these questions in a different way than somebody who never thinks about the school and what you do day in and day out. But nevertheless, I think there'll be some in here where you'll kind of be able to piece them together and see perceptions of both groups.
All right. Yep. And as we kind of close out with that is the other part that we're trying to continue with, that community engagement as we address our finances, as we develop our strategic plan, and just closing that those pieces of community engagement are so that as a board, we are carrying forth not only the vision of the seven of us, but the vision of our community, to provide the type of education for our young people that helps them reach their dreams. And so we're looking forward to receiving that information to continue to keep working. I think that one of the other things I would say is that as a board, we're trying to make sure that we do the things that the seven of us are responsible for to position the district so that we have a plan and we have a direction. And so that when we're faced with any changes, that because we've already met, worked together, and agreed, that those changes don't threaten the progress that we're trying to make. So we're very thankful and look forward to for our work with school perceptions, and look forward to hearing that other information from our community to continue to chart our path together. Thank you, Rob. We're getting ready.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Let's see, Rob. All right, we are now at item 6, consent agenda. Typically, there's no separate discussion of the items unless a board member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the general order of business and considered in their normal sequence on the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda?
No, but Board President Levy, could we bump the future board meeting dates up to before closed session? Sorry, Board Member Anderson, so I beat you to the punch.
All right, I'll make that adjustment. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That's unanimous. The motion passes. And here we are with future board meeting dates. I got to find the right agenda for myself so I can. I know I'm doing well. I won't drop the ball now. All right, here we go. I got it. Future meeting dates. We have a policy committee meeting Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. Teaching, learning, equity, and pupil services, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Our next human resources committee meeting, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. And our regular board meeting, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Governance committee, Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Policy committee, we'll just work with the month of May. And then the other June meetings are there also. Okay. Now we're at 7, executive session. And a motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education in a closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, 1 parentheses, C parentheses, relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and Section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, relative to deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Point of order, that's a roll call.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Joanne Winfield,
Aye.
Spencer Anderson,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Brian Anderson,
Aye.
Greg Schneider,
Aye.
Sean Levy.
Aye.
Mr. President, I do have one question that we might need to lean on our parliamentarian for. There was a motion that came out of the Human Resources Committee.
No, it's a committee as a whole.
Oh, right. Never mind.
Okay. 7.
Board Secretary Schultz. What was the?
I'm sorry. The vote was 7-0.
Right. So we will be going into closed session. The only thing that's left is adjournment. Is that after we come out of closed session, we'll adjourn?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we are now going into closed session. We'll take a 5 minutes as we transition.
You have been removed from the call.